I'm here for the second time on the Twig Symposium. 2 years ago, Claire organized the first Twig Symposium, and it was brilliant. It was a small meeting just like this one. There were very lively discussions. I learned so much, so I came with really high expectations this time. We are with a big delegation from Utrecht, 6 PhD students, Anne Mai, who's a colleague of mine, epidemiologist. And I think I can speak for all of us that it is really interesting. It hasn't disappointed me at all. I really enjoyed yesterday's session. So for the 2 people who are new today, welcome. And I'm sorry to tell you that you really missed a really good day of discussion and presentations. So the focus was on ethics. As Claire said, Twigs, there's a lot to say about it. And every discussion mainly ends in yes, but is it ethical? So I just took notes yesterday and yesterday evening after the excellent dinner. Thank you for that, Claire. I sort of did a recap, and I had some things I just wanted to share that I read that really sort of I thought were interesting to see. I got excited about. We got for the first time real Twigs data. Good morning. Real Twigs data presented. We had data from a trial. Trial in a cohort of young people at risk of major psychiatric events. Then there's the trial that's running within the Utrecht umbrella breast cancer cohort. So actually it is feasible. I think that's very good news. We also discussed a little bit about ethical committees, that it's not easy to get Twigs approved by ethical committees, but it can be done. And what really helps is that you go talk to them, because it is a quite complicated concept. But our experience, and also the experience from other people, is that if you start explaining it, ethical committees really get it, and actually most of the time see the point of Twigs instead of a classic randomized controlled trial. I enjoyed the talk of ethics in inefficiency very much, and I also really liked the talk by Vickers on the use of prompts in clinical care. And if you use prompts in clinical care, the response rate will go up, and that is actually good for your research. But I think the main discussion yesterday was about informed consent. John Nicol started today by taking a very strong position that informed consent is not always necessary. But he gave the example of trials where informed consent is infeasible, like in the emergency setting. There's no time to get informed consent. Patients are not able to give informed consent. So in these instances, informed consent is unfeasible. And he argues, so if it is not necessary in those settings, that can maybe be a precedent for other settings. Other people said, well, why would you need informed consent in comparative effectiveness trials or in a control arm that gets standard of care? If it doesn't really change anything for the patient, why should you tell them that they are in a control arm of a study? It's ethically unnecessary, some people said yesterday, because it does not alter patient care. And we also talked about the 17-page informed consent, patient information sheets. That is really something that's not ethical. You can overload patients with information, but how much good do you do then? So actually there were two opinions yesterday. Should we do informed consent in Twigs? And I put up here stage informed consent because some institutions like the UMC Utrecht have chosen for the option where all people who enter the cohort, the Twigs cohort, are not only asked informed consent to use their data comparatively, but also they give informed consent to be randomized to future interventions. And they also receive the information that they can be used as a control without further notification. But should we do that? So I would say the John Nicol statement is, if we don't need to, there are examples that have shown that it's not always necessary. If we don't need to, why should we do it? Well, other people would say, and I think Scott Kim was, I really liked the presentation, he said if we can do it, if you have the opportunity to inform patients and get informed consent, why shouldn't we? Because if we don't do it, it's sort of like we're not telling things on purpose, keeping things secret, have something to hide from our patients. And what I really liked was, okay, why do we give informed consent? And I think most of us, at least this was my opinion, you need to inform patients about studies, study procedures, and if that's the only reason for informed consent, you can argue, yeah, as long as the care is not affected by the study, why informed consent is not necessary for patients in the control arm who have the same treatments that they would have gotten outside the trial. But informed consent has more purposes. It's also about autonomy, respect of autonomy of the patients. There's also, apparently, we've seen that in research projects, a general expectation of patients, of the public, that there will be informed consent. The patients, they expect to be informed about being in a study. It's also a condition for trust between a patient and their doctor. Also, in terms of transparency, it is important to give informed consent, and it also gives patients a sense of control, that they do receive all the information that may not be really relevant or necessary for them, but it sort of gives them a sense of being in control of their situation. So by the end of the day, there was an hour left, planned for a discussion, which had to be shortened to 10 minutes, unfortunately, but the presentations were so brilliant, so there was no choice actually. I think at the end of the day, the panel, together with the public, with the audience, took a stance on, do we need to ask informed consent to all patients in TWIX, in the control arm in TWIX? And there was this statement: patients do not have to be told about the treatment that they will not have access to when they are in the usual care control group. And I think that was my view on the situation. Most of us agreed on that. If there was consent for the studies, including broad consent for randomization, and if no extra data or measurements were needed to be collected in the control arm. But there's still a lot of open ends, there's still a lot of things to discuss, so I'm very happy there's a day 2 with a very interesting program. Where is it? Who took my program? So, I would like to introduce the first speakers. Clive Collett and Amanda Hunn from the UK Health Authority Board.